Hey friends, Pastor Ryan here from Bridgeway Middle School Ministry, MSM. We miss you guys. This is so weird not being able to meet because of the stuff happening around the world and the stuff we see on the news and all of this kind of scary stuff. But we don't want that to keep us from running after our King Jesus together. So we're going to spend a little bit of time right now in Scripture where we're at in the Doubt It series, because it's kind of a perfect time. When we're talking about having questions and even doubts in our faith and following Jesus, there's times that we don't get it. We don't understand what God's doing. And that's what we're going to spend a little bit of time right now talking about. You see, the first couple weeks of the Doubt It series, week 1, we were looking at you're not alone in your questions. Somewhere along the lines in this church life, in the youth group life, we think it makes us weak or that we should have shame when we have questions and we have doubts and we don't know how to handle some of the things that we face. And then the second week, we did God doesn't shame us for our questions. And I'm excited for this week because the timing is quite perfect for the season we're in with being out of school, being not able to be with friends, being quote-unquote quarantine in this place. It's a time where we would have questions. We sent home a link to a video on YouTube. If you've watched it already, fantastic. If you haven't, press pause now and watch the video. Job obviously had some questions when everything was taken from him. In this really hard to read story because God allowed these things to happen to Job. Have you ever asked God a question and never got the answer? Or got it differently than you wanted to get it? Have you ever asked God for something that you never received? Think about what that was and what that was like. Do you think God has ever spoken to you like he spoke to Job? Without like the whirlwind thing and all of that. You see, but it's in those trying times that we ask questions and we even doubt that God is this loving and caring and with us God in these moments that are scary. And we can't figure out what's going on. But then we hear scriptures like Romans 8:28, and we know that for those who love God, all things work together for good. And for those who are called according to his purposes. And it's moments like Job was facing and moments that maybe many of us are feeling right now that don't feel that good. You see, God didn't even answer Job's question, and that's the thing that gets us a little frazzled in the midst of it. God didn't answer his question, at least not the way Job wanted him to answer. Job wanted to know why many terrible things are happening, and many of us are asking similar questions to that right now. Why is this happening all around us? And God gave him an interesting answer. God just started to share who he was, that he was the creator of everything, that he was bigger, greater, and more powerful than we could ever imagine. This is what he's sharing with Job in this horrible time that he's facing. And he even shared to Job how small he was compared to the big story that was being told. Job didn't get the answer he was looking for, but he had an encounter with God through it, and that was worth it. If you're dissatisfied with how that story of Job ends, that he asks God questions, why are you allowing this to happen to me when I'm a good person? And you don't like how that story ends, how he didn't really get the answer that he wanted, you're not alone in that. It can be hard to see why our good and incredible Jesus, our God, who we talk about all the time, allows terrible things to happen. It doesn't make sense to us. But we need to understand that's where real faith starts to show its face. It's hard to have faith when you're experiencing something you can't explain and that you don't understand. But that's exactly what this story about Job is about. It's about a faith that doesn't answer to our circumstances or the things that we're facing. It only answers to who our loving creator God is. Job didn't get the answer he was looking for, but he got that encounter with God. And that's what we can be seeking in this hard time as well, because when you look to the end of the story of Job, everything plus more was given back to him. God had a greater story he was telling. And Job didn't need to be afraid. It didn't make that time that Job went through, not scary, not painful, and not be a season that made him question God and question if God was good. But the story didn't end with the pain. It ended with the promises of his King, the promises of our Jesus. We see in the story of Job that everything was redeemed back to him. A double portion. Everything he had lost, he had been given more than after the pain and suffering was over. But that doesn't mean that the suffering and pain and the questioning didn't happen. But it does mean our God is a redeeming God. It doesn't matter what things we face. It doesn't matter what things scare us, and if we're afraid we're not going to make it to the other side, MSM, because our God already has victory over it. So I want you to ask yourself a couple questions tonight. Just you and Jesus. Just you and your God. Have you ever asked God a question that's never felt like it got answered? Why'd you ask it? Have you ever asked God for something that you never received? What was it really? Have you ever had someone try to comfort you in a time of trial or tragedy? How did you respond? My challenge for you, MSM, is that we would be there for each other, even if it has to be digitally, through text or phone calls. Crazy. People actually talk on the phone. It's awesome, though. Text, phone calls to our friends to see how they're doing in this isolating time, because we are not alone. And this we of MSM will still run after He who is our God. We love you guys, and we'll see you soon.